Okay, now because the U.S. is proving to be grossly inept in every possible way that they could handle this, I mean, what are you, slow? There are so many ways to handle this. It is a little ridiculous. But I'm going to break down for you how you should be interpreting what I just said about Isabella. Are you ready? Okay. Now, unfortunately, you did not provide me with a, in your analysis, you might be getting these possibly Illuminati psychologists to say, well, now it could be. Now, sometimes when they're on a pink cloud, I'm assuming they're from the South for some reason, when they're on a pink cloud, they have this, or, well, you know, delusions of grandeur is this, and that could be a sign of narcissism. She does talk about herself, and well, it could be mania, because, you know, bipolar, well, I mean, she's pretty consistent in her work, and, okay, it's not quite characteristic. Well, it could be schizophrenia, except they can't focus and aren't generally eloquent, etc., etc., and it doesn't ever quite fit. Damn it, it's Truman Show-itis, which we just made up, like, last year. Oh. Right, because no cameras exist. Okay, and they keep trying to wedge me into places, and so what they're inevitably going to do is take, and they're going to push this in court very hard too, so let's just go right now. What I just said and say it's dissonance. This is a fantasy life indicative of a person trying to feel self-important in ways that she just didn't feel, trying to project perfectionism and delusions of grandeur, and it's just another way for her to believe her own fantasies. Isn't that correct? Let's go. Okay, first of all, I'm going to argue with you. You can't disprove what I'm saying. You actually can't. Why? Because you can't actually disprove that past lives don't exist. There's a lot of evidence that they do exist. If you really want to get into it, you can do the research yourself. But you can't actually prove that they don't. A. So you can't actually prove that I wasn't her. A. B. When you listen to the tapes of how I'm talking about Isabella, am I projecting perfection? No. Now, if a person is having a false memory, which is what us hypnotherapists, well, I'm not. I'm only slightly trained, so I don't want to go too far, but are what we're taught about when people are projecting false memories, what you're going to see is things like, if it is for delusions of grandeur and self-importance, they're going to focus on, well, I was really wealthy, everybody loved me, I was just so powerful and amazing and perfect, right? Goddamn, did I make history, right? Hugely influential. Here's why. This is not what I did. So what I'm saying is, fine, chalk it up to fantasy, but let's look at how I projected onto these memories, because that's what's most important. Really, I'm just remembering, but I'll tell you. If I were projecting my self-reflections onto this character fantasy life, then what did you see? Did I state that Isabella was perfect? No. And actually, I went farther to humanize her more than history ever did. I told you about certain petty conflicts. One of the things that gave Isabella such a larger-than-life feel was her above-itness. How she could use spirituality to be above it. I don't do that. I actually knock her down a peg and say, well, now let's... Secretly, she was very amused by the commentary about Beltrame. Secretly, behind closed doors, she was talking shit. But, you know, she tried to, oh, now, guys, let's not get too into it. What is that doing? It's taking her from larger than life, above, you know, almost celestial celebrity to human. Faulted human. I admit she makes mistakes. I admit that she did the best she could with what she knew, but that there were issues there. I admit the faults of her children. I admit her faults in naming her kid. I admit her frustrations with her marriage that was not perfect. And it's not one-sided. I give people credit where credit is due. I discredit her in ways that she needs to be brought down a peg, and I credit her in the ways that she did. Now, what did I not focus on? how much money she made from the New World. I didn't focus on that. What I didn't focus on, all the impacts, that she made in other countries and how this really set the way for Catholicism, etc., etc., etc. I point out the fault in being so gung-ho. I'm taking away this perceived notion about her, if anything. I'm not focusing on how everyone loved her and she was so perfect. I point that there were people that didn't like her just out of principle to choose an opposing party, or didn't like her because they thought she was snobby and acting above their party. Okay. And I'm not describing her solely on terms of power. Now, I'm pointing to certain things, like that she was brave, that she was funny, that there are many parallels here. But if I'm fine, then take it all as fantasy, but look at how I project it. Is it fair? No, actually, as was Isabella. Was it black and white thinking? No. Was it exacerbating her perfect grandeur? No. So fine. Take it as a fantasy, but realize that in that case, my MO is not projected to be, first of all, it's not projected to be what a hypnotherapist would be trained to look for on false memories. And second of all, it wouldn't be a sign of the mental health issues that you're trying to chalk it up to. Lastly, what I would argue in court, what I'll argue with you right now, I am entitled to believe whatever the fuck I want to believe. Now, you're trying to discern, well, now, if she's mixing an old fantasy life with the new, is she really able to tell what's going on in this life? Oh, but I am. And I've been sitting here talking about that life totally separate from this life. It's only when I want to merge it together, and I can make that distinction like I am right now. Which is why when I supply you with, 10, 20, 30,000 pieces of evidence in this life, it is relevant to this life. All I did was draw parallels where parallels are. I'm just explaining on a spiritual level why things are happening. I know you can't handle it. I know you want to throw it out. I'm just saying you're not actually doing it correctly. Lastly, if you are going to play psychologist, you need to not play psychologist. You need to play social psychologist. Why? Because it's more inclusive. So, when analyzing for, say, schizophrenia, if you open your textbooks, and actually I have looked into these things and have actually been pretty fucking close to a master of my own psychology because of all the years I spent studying my own. So bring it, bitch. Oh, you have a question? I have an answer, and a damn good one too. And if you looked at, say, schizophrenia, you would say you must first look into the person's cultural relativity. Now, if I'm a person who, let's say, is Buddhist or had Jungian parents, that's another thing. You want me to be evaluated by my peers, then you need to get rid of the Freudians and start bringing the Jungians in, because that's how I was raised. So to understand what's going on with me, you need to understand how I was brought up. I have Jungian parents. So what sounds crazy to you is actually just a division of psychology that you're pretending you don't know. Jungianism. So we're looking at cultural relativity. So what would that be? I've proven to you that it's in my genetic bloodline, but also in my personal history for being a believer in witchcraft. And what is that? It has to do with past lives. Okay, just like a Buddhist would have to do with past lives, just like perhaps a Hindu would also believe in past lives. Does that make them schizophrenic? No, it's called cultural relativity. Look it up. Next, you have to look at personal relativity. What were their parental influence? And I just said that. Okay? How were they raised to believe? So before you just go, that sounds weird, it must be this now, we'll just pick up a page and try to shove her into this category. I'm saying shove yourself into a category, you fucking crackpot pop psychologist, and do your job better, or I'll do it for you. Thank you. Lastly, I'd like to say that I have the right to spiritual beliefs and spiritual freedoms and not to be persecuted for these rights. Oh, I could shred apart your religions, tell you why that shit sounds ridiculous, why you must be crazy to believe. You believe there is a little man dancing, I guess he's clogging or something, down below in the core of the earth where it's too hot for anything to live, and he just lives there, doesn't burn up, and just schemes on what he's going to do to us. Oh, a lot of you believe that. Do I think you're crazy for believing that? No. Do I agree with what you believe? No. But it is your spiritual right to believe, and religious freedom to believe in whatever the fuck you want to believe in. It is not for me to judge. Why? Because I'm not God. I couldn't tell you if you're right or wrong. I can just have a belief. Okay? Are you God? You for sure? No, there's no past lives? No, and you can't prove it either. And don't even throw math into it, because if you're going to say, well, if you add up the amount of population flux, I'm tossing that right out the window. Why? Because you're presupposing that you only get reincarnated as a human. As the human population is going up, the animal population is going down, for example.